Kakalosh Boker Tov. We're just going to continue with Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. So Daf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph were by the two dots, where basically we just said, Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amar Talmid Echad, they said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, in the name of a Talmid, that the machloka between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel was on a mavui, which was less than 4 amot, which is going to be permitted or with a lechi or with a korah. Okay, or. So what is a machloket? If it's going to be, it says over here, if it's going to be from 4 till 10. Okay, that's the machloket between them. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Kiva says, al zeh v'al zeh nechleku. Machloket is really on both of them. And now we're going to start, okay? Rabbi Akiva, Hainu Tanakama, asked the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva is like the Tanakama, which means that he said that the machloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel was also an amavui, which was from 4 amot until 10, right? And even before 4 amot, which means, according to this shita, he was saying that more than 10, according to everybody, you need the tzurat petach and all the other things. Less than 4 is not a machloket. And then between 4 and 10 is a machloket. Says it's not true, because Rabbi Kiva holds like the Tanakama, that even before 4, meaning from 0 to 4, it's also a machloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. So what's the difference between Rabbi Akiva and the Tanakama? So answers the Gemara, Ike Benayu, the difference between them, the Rav Achlai v'item Rav Yechiel. The difference between them is Rav Achlai, and some people say Rav Yechiel, which was brought on Yud Bet Amud Aleph. If you remember, either the Tanakama or the Rabbi Kiva holds of the psak of Rav Achlai, and when you have a mavui, which is going to be less than 4 tfachim, nothing, and the second one, he argues and he says that you do need something. Velo misaime, but if we don't know which one holds like Rav Achlai and which one was actually arguing. So because of that, we're not really sure. Okay? So that's the difference between Rabbi Akiva and the Tanakama. Okay? Everyone could hear me perfectly? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tanya, we learned in a Braita. Amar Rabbi Akiva, says Rabbi Akiva. Lo amar Rabbi Shmuel davar zeh. Rabbi Shmuel did not say this in the name of the Talmid, that there was no machloket with less than 4 amot. Ela oto Talmid marva davar zeh, v'alacha ki lo oto Talmid. It wasn't Rabbi Shmuel that he just said it, right? Because we know that Rabbi Shmuel was a big chacham, and he knows that the machloket was even in less. But rather, that Talmid was the one that said it, but the halacha is like that Talmid. So the Talmid was the one that came and said, this is a machloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel, and the halacha is like that Talmid. So says the Gemara, Haguva Kashya, you just said it. You just told me a minute that it wasn't Rabbi Shmuel that said it. Amarta lo amar Rabbi Shmuel davar zeh. So that means it's mashma that the halacha is not like that Talmid. And then you say the halacha is like that Talmid. So explain. If you just tell me that Rabbi Shmuel didn't say such a thing, why he's such a big chacham, and he knows the halacha is not like that. So that means it's mashma that the halacha is not like that. 2 seconds later, you tell me the halacha is like that. So what's going on? So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, it says Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, Lo Amra Rabbi Akiva didn't mention it, that the halacha is like oto talmid, ela lechaded ba talmidim. Sometimes the rabbi will come and purposely say something misleading or wrong in order to keep the students on their toes, in order to keep them in shape. Because if not, they get bored. So what do? You purposely throw them something.
You would never do that, though, would you, Rabbi? You would never.
What?
You would never do that, would you?
I do it all the time, Richard. And then I answer. I was just testing you.
He always asks you, are you listening? And you have to answer.
No, that's just to show you that you didn't put the picture on the Zoom and then everyone just disappeared. Right? It's like the days of school, no?
No way.
Very good, Baruch Hashem. No, but it does exist. I remember once somebody always doing that, and then they used to say, I knew that, I was just testing you. And it was purposely, just to throw it at you. And then you're like, really? Are you sure it's like that? You understand? Something like that.
Rabbi, what I know this is terribly out of line, but I'm just dying to tell you something I just heard, a small word about Gibraltar, from Chaim Kanievsky. Should I save it for last of the daf, and I'll save it?
Yeah, you could save it for the last of the daf, but he's the one that says that that's the only place that you could say lechatchila, the bracha. I will say Yama Gadol.
That's the word I was going to bring.
If
you look one way, you see this, and the other, it's the base Yosef versus
Yeah, because it's called the Strait of Gibraltar.
Tell the people what you're talking about.
Rav Chaim Kanievsky said that basically one of the only places where you could say the bracha without any machloket, avosei Yam Gadol, making the Great Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, is there's a machloket, is that the Atlantic Ocean or Mediterranean Sea, but they connect by the Strait of Gibraltar, or technically on the other side also by Morocco, right, by the Tangiers area. You could also see it on that area. So there, you could actually go there and you could see both the Atlantic Ocean connecting with the Mediterranean Sea, so you can make the bracha. Every time I used to go to Chaim Kanievsky, they used to tell him that. He's from Gibraltar, where they, fine. Says the Gemara. So Amar Rav Yehuda ben Shmuel lo Amar Rav Akiva lechadev talmidim. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, no, nid'in itmar. Nid'in means Rabbi Akiva was just saying that it appears the halacha is like that talmid, which means that they actually appears like that, but not that the halacha mamash is like that. It just appears like that. That the halacha is like that. Okay, fine. Says the Gemara. Okay, it says as follows. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Kol makom she'ata motze mishum Rabbi Yishmael amar talmid echad lifnei Rabbi Akiva. Any time that you see in the name of Rabbi Yishmael that he said in the name of a talmid chachad in front of Rabbi Akiva, eno ela Rabbi Meir. It's going to be Rabbi Meir. Sheshimesh et Rabbi Yishmael ve'Rabbi Akiva. That it was Rabbi Meir. He did shimush also by Rabbi Yishmael and also by Rabbi Akiva. Remember, Rabbi Meir Balanes was a student of Rabbi Akiva, and also he was a student of Rabbi Yishmael. The time was learned in the right Amar Rabbi Meir says Rabbi Meir. When I was by Rabbi Yishmael, I used to put the kankantum inside of the dio. And he never told me anything against this minhag of putting this type of an ink. Kankantum inside of dio. It's like a certain type of an ink inside the regular black ink to dye, right, in order to make the ink to write. So he says, he didn't say anything. But when I came to Rabbi Akiva, he told me it was prohibited. So you see that what happened was that at the beginning, he was learning by Rabbi Ishmael, and then afterwards he was learning by Rabbi Akiva. So says the Gemara, any, is it true? Says Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel, the name of Rabbi when I used to learn by Rabbi Akiva, he never said anything. And then when I went to Rabbi Ishmael, he told me, what are you doing? Amarti lo lovlani. He says, I'm a sofer. Rabbi Meir Balanes was a sofer. Amarli, he told me, Beni, be careful with your work. Because at the end of the day, your work is melechet shamayim. Maybe you're going to lack a letter or make an extra letter. It's like you destroyed the entire world. I told him, I've got something, and the name is kankantum. That I put it inside of the dio. He says, are you allowed to do such a thing? But the Torah says, you have to write and you have to erase. There has to be something which for sure you're able to erase, which means that therefore you're not allowed to put the kankantum inside, because then it will never be erased. It's a type of a dio which is like a permanent marker. They will never erase. So says the Gemara, what's going on now? By the way, just to understand, right? Again, part of the question was, it was the exact opposite. Before we learned that Rabbi Akiva didn't mind. Rabbi Ishmael didn't mind. Rabbi Akiva said it's asur. Now we're saying the exact opposite. Rabbi Akiva didn't mind, and now Rabbi Ishmael said it's asur. But he says, "My kamale, my Rabbi Adale, haki kamale, lo mi bay bechasav idolotin divke ana debaki ana elafinu mechash zvuv nami." Right? Did maati viati vataged dalet umachikle umash velereish. He's saying, 1 second. What is the question? What is the answer? He comes and he tells them, be very careful because maybe you're going to add a letter or take off a letter. And then he comes and he answers him, no, I've got a good permanent marker. What does that have to do with it? What does a permanent marker have to do with you lack a letter or you added an extra letter? So answers the Gemara, no. What he was telling him, he says, the extra letters are lacking a letter. That I'm an expert. That there's nothing more to talk about. Even if a fly will come and start chopping it away at the part of a dalid and then make it into a resh, I'm not afraid of it. Why? He says, because I have the kankantum, and the kankantum is like a permanent marker which makes it that it won't be able to come off. And therefore, I'm not afraid of that. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, kasha, shimush, the kasha, asara, asara. First of all, it's a question, who was who was he mishamesh first? Who did he learn by first? First, did he learn by Rabbi Ishmael and then Rabbi Kiva? Or first by Rabbi Kiva and then Rabbi Ishmael? That's the first question. Second question, who's the one that's being osed and who's the one that's being permitted? In the first one, Rabbi Akiva was osed. In the second one, Rabbi Ishmael was the one who said Rabbi Akiva was the one permitted. So what's going on? So Bishma Shimush Kashia, I could say the question about who did he do Shimush by first. Remember, Shimush is who did he learn by first. Was not a question. The beginning came to Rabbi Akiva. But since he wasn't able to learn well, he went to Rabbi Ishmael. He started learning, and then again he went to Rabbi Akiva, and that's when he continued his advanced studies. Okay, so then that makes sense. So that means it comes out that he did all three. He did Rabbi Akiva. He wasn't able to handle it. He went to Rabbi Ishmael. He learned, and once he was already knowledgeable, then he went to Rabbi Akiva, and that's when he was able to obtain and to actually, to sofeg, to absorb everything that he was learning. So then it makes sense. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Ishmael, Rabbi Akiva. Okay, but he says, but the Asara is still a question. Kasha, you're right. That's a good question. Okay, it's going to be a good question. So continues the Gemara. Tanya, we learned in a Braita. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Meir used to say, Lakol matilin kan kuntun letoch hadio. For all kitvei kodesh, all different types of scriptures, of holy scriptures, you're allowed to put the kankantum inside of the dio, except for Parashat Sotah. Right? Why? Because the Parashat Sotah, obviously, you had to erase it, right, in the water. Rabbi Yaakov used to say in the name of Rabbi Meir, Chutz mi Parashat Sotah shel Mikdash, except for the Parashat Sotah in the Bet HaMikdash, that they actually had to erase it. But when you're talking about Stam, Parashat Sotah, and a regular Sefer Torah, that there's no problem. My Benai, what's the difference between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov? Rabbi Yirmiyah says, to erase, right, that which we said in part of the Torah. Right? Torah, that's the difference between them. The Hani Tanai, Kehani Tanai. And these Tanaim is like these Tanaim. The Tanya was learned in the Raita. The Megillah of one Sotah is not kosher to give to another Sotah. Okay, which means that you cannot give another Sotah from the same waters. It has to be two different parashiot and two different things erased. Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Chai bar Yoshia Amar, Rabbi Chai bar Yoshia says, Megillata kshera lashko basotah acheret. Right? The Megillah is only going to be kosher to give to another Sotah. Okay, which means, that means according to him, you are allowed to give to two different Sotot, right? Two different Sotas, you're allowed to give the same drinks, like meaning from the same type of parasha. So Amar Rav Papa says, Dil Malohi, maybe it's not true. Maybe it's over there that the Tanakama didn't say that the Megillah is going to be psula to another Sotah. But since they went and they did everything for Rachel, to lo hadra, right? So then they can't use it anymore for Leah. But by the Sefer Torah, he says that by the Sefer Torah, Tistama mikatva, that Stam was written, right? A Sefer Torah was written for Stam. It wasn't written for a specific woman. Hachana means so to hear the machina, that you could erase it. So Rav Nachman Maritza says, no, din malohi, maybe it's not true. He says, maybe it wasn't over there that he says you're allowed to give it to another Sotah, which is a Shita Rav Chai bar Yoshia. Because it was written Stam for a Sotah. But by the Sefer Torah, that the Sefer Torah is meant to learn, the Litlamek Tiva, it wasn't written for a Sotah, it was written to learn. So I would have said that you can't erase it. Okay? So says the Gemara, Velet le Rabbi Chai bar Yoshia. And he doesn't hold, Rabbi Chai bar Yoshia doesn't hold, Rabbi Haditznan, that which we learned in the Mishnah. Katav get legareshet ishto. What happens if a person writes a get to divorce his wife? Okay, Yud Gimel Amud Bet. V'nimlach. So he changed his mind. Right? It could happen. A person wants to get rid of Frecha. Yeah, why? But she burnt the children. She burnt Adafina. And then what happens? Right? She made up. So what happens is Mitzao Ben Hiro. Right? So somebody found him. Ve'amar shimcha kishmi v'shenishticha kevshenishti. And he went and he started speaking. He says, 1 second. Your name is like my name. Your wife's name is like my wife's name. What a coincidence. So what happens? They can't use the get. Remember, in the olden days, in the get, it wasn't written the last name or anything like that. It was just written, whatever it is. Yeah? Yehuda ben whatever, Yaakov. And then, it was Dina bat Leah, something like that. You understand? Something, so therefore, why couldn't they use it? It says, no, it's pasul. So it says the Gemara, Can you compare the two cases of the get and of the sota? Hatam vekatav la ketiv. It's written in the Torah vekatav la. You have to write it for her, lishma. It has to be for her. Hacha ve'asa la ketiv. Here it's just written, you have to do it. Right? Ba'inan asiyah lishma. Asiyah dida mechikai. He says, no, you just need asiyah, which is lishma. Asiyah dida mechikai. That in itself is like erasing it. So Amar Acha Bar Chanina says of Acha Bar Chanina, Galui ve'adua lifnei mi shama v'ya'olam. It's revealed in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? L'mi shama v'ya'olam she'em b'dorosh Rabbi Meir gadol k'vado. There was nobody as great as Rabbi Meir. So why is it that the halacha is like him? Shelo yechlu chaverav la'amol asof dato, because his friends couldn't understand his words. Shehu omer al tameh tahor umareh lo panim al tahor tameh umareh lo panim. Basically, he was able to play around, that he was not playing, chas v'shalom, I'm just explaining. He was able to say something which is tameh tahor, umareh lo panim, right? And then he was able to explain it. And then he would say, an tahor tameh, and he would be able to explain tameh. Meaning, whatever you wanted to say, he would be able to say the opposite and show you he's right. But that's a wisdom, you understand? Many times I could tell you the opposite, but I can't show you I'm right. But here, it's no matter what you say, I could say the opposite, and no matter what, I'm going to show you that I'm right. That's a wisdom. You understand? It's a very big wisdom. Okay? Fine. Tana, we learned in the Braita, Lo Rabbi Meir Shemo. His name was not Rabbi Meir, Ela Rabbi Nehorai Shemo. His name was Rabbi Nehorai. Okay? And some people say Rabbi Elazar ben Arach Shemo. His name was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. So why was it called Lama Nikra Shemo Nehorai? Shemanhir enei chachamim b'halacha. Is Rabbi Meir used to be Meir enei chachamim b'halacha. He used to illuminate the eyes of the chachamim with halacha. But really his name was Rabbi Nehorai, right? Or something said Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. Fine. Amar Rebbe says, the reason why I'm so sharp, I'm sharper than my friends, because I saw Rabbi Meir from his back. I mean, when I used to learn from him, I used to sit right behind him, and I used to see him from his back. But if I would see him face to face, I would have even been even more sharp. I would have been even smarter. That's why your eyes should always see, right, your master. By the way, you should know, that's why there's also an inyan that you shouldn't only just hear a shiur, you should see a shiur. That's why Zoom is just better than stam, just listening to a shiur. When you listen to a shiur, you're not seeing the person. So it's not always the same. When you see, it's something different. Some people used to just say, I saw this rabbi. That was enough. I remember in Yeshiva in Erisel, Toronto, many times we used to have rabbanim that used to come in and speak in Yiddish. We wouldn't understand a word. But I still remember many times the rabbanim used to tell us, just come and see them. That's all that we want you to do. We don't want you to understand anything. Just come and see. That's all that it is. The fire that used to come, sometimes these rabbanim were big, huge gedolim. And come, they would speak in Yiddish, but mamash, you would be like lost. We didn't understand Yiddish. We were in grade 9, right? Hardly understand. How much did we understand? Nothing. Wallo. But they said, just come just to see. The seeing has a much bigger impression, right, than just the hearing. That's why by Matan Torah, we were able to see the kolot. We were able to see what was usually not seen. The voices, the sound waves, we were able to see it. It was something different. Amar Rabbi Avu, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Talmid ya lo Rabbi Meir, Besumchus Shemo. Rabbi Meir had a student, his name was Sumchus. Shaya omer kol davar v'davar shetumah, 48 tameh tumah. On every single thing of tumah, he used to say 48 different reasons why it's tameh. And they used to say on the same thing on tahor, 48 reasons why it's tahor. So imagine, this is tameh, I'm going to give you 48 reasons why it's tameh. Tahor, 48 reasons. Mamash, it's a wisdom. So Tana, they learned in the Braita, Tamid Vatik. Yavne, there was a Talmid Vatik, a very an incredible student in Yavne. He used to say that a sheretz is pure with 150 different reasons. Amar Ravina says, I'm also going to make it a kavachomer and say it's tahor. Just like the snake, which is memit, it kills animals or human beings. It brings more tuma in the world, and still it's tahor after death. Sheretz, which does not usually kill, and it doesn't make more, it doesn't multiply tuma in the world. Shouldn't be tahor afterwards. But it's not true. At the end of the day, he's just doing a kotz, which means he's just causing them to die. That means the kotz itself is for sure tahor. He's just causing them to die. But the body itself is not actually is not the concept. It's the kotz. It's the, how do you say the kotz? The
Thorn.
thorn. No, so the kotz is the thorn, is a regular thorn, but here we're talking about the kotz which he bites. Like it's like a
fangs, but they're saying the fangs are just like thorns.
Yeah, the fangs and everything that comes in and which actually gives the poison is just like a thorn. It's nothing else. Okay? Amar Rabbi Abba Meshmuel, says Rabbi Abba Meshmuel, Shalosh Shanim nechluku Bet Shammai Bet Hillel. There were 3 years that they were arguing Bet Shammai Bet Hillel. Halalu omrim halacha kamotenu, halalu omrim, each one was saying halachas like us. Yatsa bat kol v'amra, bat kol came out and said, a famous kimara, Elu va'elu divrei Elohim chayim. These are the words of the living God, which means they're both correct. But still, halacha is kebet Hillel. The halacha is still like Bet Hillel. So the Gemara asks, if anyway the words of the living God, so why do we say the halacha is like Bet Hillel? Number one, 2 reasons. Number one, that they were nochin v'aluvim. They were savlanim. They were more tolerant of people, right? They were more calm. They were more, right? And also, they used to teach the words of Bet Shammai, right? So meaning that there were a few things. Number one, they were very tolerant. Number two, they would not only tell them people their own opinion. They would say their own opinion and the opinion of the opposite opinion. But not only that, they would say the opposing opinion before their opinion, which means they would mamash think about it. They would do the exact mamash. They would do the exact opposite. They would do their other opinion first. Okay. Just like we learned, somebody that had his head in the majority of the body in the sukkah, the shulchan was inside of the house, the table was in the house. Bet Shammai says it's pasul bet Hillel machshirin. Amru bet Hillel, Bet Shammai says bet Hillel to Bet Shammai, lo kacha yamaseh. It wasn't like that, but rather what happened? He says lo kacha yamaseh, ela shelchu ziknei Bet Shammai v'ziknei bet Hillel levaker et Rabbi Yochanan ben Achoronit. But they went to visit Rabbi Yochanan ben Achoronit, the students of Bet Shammai and student Bet Hillel. Right? Hillel levaker. What happened was, so they went and they found him that the shulchan was betoch habayit. So that's like what? Like Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel. Amrulo and Bet Shammai says Bet Shammai. Is that a proof? Afhen Amrulo. They also told him, he said, if you did that, you've never done sukkah in your entire life. That's what Bet Shammai told him. Ramdecha comes to teach you, shekola mashpil atzmo. Anybody that brings himself down, Hakadosh Baruch Hu magbiyo. Hakadosh Baruch Hu brings him up. Echola magbiya atzmo. But anybody that brings himself up, that's haughty, Hakadosh Baruch Hu mashpilo. Hakadosh Baruch Hu brings him down. Somebody that's running after greatness, Gedula runs after him. But somebody that runs away from greatness, the greatness runs after him. Somebody that comes and tries to push the time, which means that he's going to come and he's going to push the time, right? The time will push him. But somebody that's going to be pushed because of the time, it's going to actually hold them. Which means never try to push your time in order to do something. When the time is right, that's when it's going to happen. Don't start pushing your way in. When they learned to the Braita, there were 2.5 years that they were arguing. One of them was saying, it was better that a person was not created than if he was created. The other one said, no, it was better. It was better that a person was created. But then at the end they went and they said, it was better that we were not created before we were created. But now that we were created, look how apropos it is, how apt it is for the month of Elul. Yeah, that he says a person should do self-introspect. There's a whole question, what's the difference between yifashfesh b'ma'asav and yimashmesh b'ma'asav? There's a whole thing, what does that mean exactly? But basically, some people say that yifashfesh b'ma'asav is afterwards, which means after the action, already look into your actions and then do teshuvah. The other opinion is yimashmesh b'ma'asav is before doing the action, look into your actions before even acting. Okay, but both of them are 100% correct, which means that a person should always do self-introspect and analyze their actions before actually coming and following suit. Okay? Says a Mishnah, and we're going to finish with the Mishnah for today. HaKorah she'amru. The Korah, remember the Korah is the top beam. that we said, rechava kedei lekabel ariach, has to be thick enough in order to receive an ariach, in order to receive a brick. This is the Mishnah over here. Right? What is the ariach? The ariach is chetzi levana shel shalosh tvachim. The ariach is going to be half of a levana of 3 tvachim. So that's 1.5 tefachs. So this is the korah. Remember, the korah is the beam. This is the mavui. Remember, this type of tile is mavui. The green area is the Reshuta Yachid, private domain. And over here would be the public domain, in the road area. Okay? Okay? Okay, perfect. So he says, it says over here, it's going to be, it's going to be enough for have a tefach, in order to have an ariach to the rochav. So it says over here, what does that mean? It says over here, right, the ariach was going to be 1.5. Now, therefore, the korah has to be a tefach, right, in order to have the ariach, right, 1.5, which means this beam has to have a tefach. Why does it have to have a tefach? In order to accept this brick that has a tefach and a half. Okay? Now, says the Mishnah, rechava kedei lekabel ariach, it has to be rechava to accept the ariach. Ubriya, it has to be healthy, which means strong. Kedei lekabel ariach. Rabbi Yehuda says rechava afi shem briya. No, as long as it's thick enough, even though it cannot accept it because it's not strong enough. Hayta shel kash or shel kanim. If it was made out of kash, out of straw or kanim, ro'in ota keilu shel matechet. So we look at it as if it's going to be made out of metal. Akuma. If it's going to be akuma, this is the picture of akuma. Look. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. This is akuma. It's crooked. This is straight, pshuta. That's the straight line. Now this is akuma. So if it's akuma, ro'in ota keilu pshuta. Agula, if it's going to be round, that's this way. Round, ro'in ota kilu mirubat. We look at it as if it's going to be squared. So this is a round one. Okay? Kol sheyesh be'kefo.
Rabbi, I have a question. What are you talking about? If it's made of straw, they say it's made of metal. What does that mean?
Please speak up, Richard. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? I'm not.
Now I hear you.
What does it mean when they say you feel like it's made of metal? It's made of straw. Why would it? It can't do anything made of straw.
No, but that's what we're saying. We're looking at it as if it could be mikabel dariyach, and therefore it's going to be kosher, even though it cannot.
Sorry, not following.
According to what did Rabbi Yehuda just tell you? Rabbi Yehuda just told you that you don't need it to be. You just need the size.
Width. You just need the size. You don't need the strength.
Exactly. You don't need the strength. So therefore, even though it's made out of straw, so now never in the world will a straw be able to carry a brick. But we look at it as if that it's able to carry the brick, and that's why it's going to be good.
But you cannot use straw as a korah.
That's what he's saying. He's saying yes. Hayta shel kash shel kanim. We look at it as if it's going to be matechet, metal, and therefore it's going to be kosher, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Again,
you can't use a bent one like that as a korah.
Which one?
The bent one you just showed us. You can't do that.
The bent one has nothing to do with the other one. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda was talking about before bent. He's talking about straight, but just the material being used. The bent is the next part of the Mishnah. Okay? Now the Mishnah says, what happens if it's slanted, like this? This was this picture. This one. So he says, we look at it as if it's straight, and then it's kosher. What happens if it's round? We look at it as if it's going to be also square, and then it's going to be kosher. Right? But then the Mishnah finishes off by saying, what does that mean? If you have 3 tfachim of going around, right? The circumference, I think it's what it said, no? The circumference. So you know that the rochav is going to be a tefach. That's this picture. The rochav is one tefach.
How big would the box be inside that circle?
I don't know, but again, this is talking about the pie.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, very good. Okay, so by finishing this Mishnah, we just finished the Daf. Bezrat Hashem, we continue on Sunday with Daf Yod Daled, Bezrat Hashem.
Shabbat shalom.